to have people knowing where all the money is.
Okay. All right. I believe we are live here. Okay. Can you hear me okay, Tommy? Okay. Wonderful. All right. So we use this. Create it now. Move this out of the way. 3 years of the pandemic is something that we'll learn all the tricks of the trip. Okay. All right. Here we go. So we are continuing on our journey, Rishon and Daled. We had completed Sif Aleph last time, and we saw at the very end of the last time we met, we talked about the position of the Ramah, which he thought, that we follow this opinion, which was that if you have a tanur and it has the clay molding, then everything with regards to the notion here of roasting would be permissible. But if it was on the fire, then and that's shehu megula, and that's exposed, so it's accessible. Even if you think, oh, I'm going to burn this thing, it's put on the fire. Nonetheless, we don't allow that because obviously, if you put it directly on the fire, you don't mind the burning taste of the burnt food. And if you have a tanur which is not sealed by clay, it's closed, but it's not sealed by clay. So then it depends. That's where it depends whether what kind of meat it was. Was it a soft meat like the gedi, which cooks very relatively quickly to the basar shore, which takes a lot more time. With the gedi, we had said at the end of last time, the gedi and the oaf, if it was with the basar shore, with the tough meat, that's where we're worried that you might stoke the coals, because with that meat, it's not going to burn so quickly, and it's also, if you hasten the cooking, it can get done right then there on Friday, right? And then secondly, the basar gedi and oaf, the fowl and the goat, which is soft, so that one is gonna, if you start playing with the fire, it will burn. It will not have a good taste ultimately at the end of the day, and therefore that's where we separate, between the different types of meats, and that is the practice of Ashkenazim. Now, we move on to the next Sif Beis, which is channeling a Mishnah from Masechus Shabbos, which we made mention to, I think, in our introduction that I read from the Be'er Halacha. And so let's take a look at this here in the Shulchan Aruch. He says, "Ein solin batzal uveitza ovasar al gabe gechalim ela kadei sheyitzalev ba'od yom." So now we're talking about things that are literally roasted over on the coals, Previously, we're talking about putting it into an oven situation. We did mention the idea of putting it directly on the fire, but here we're talking about on the coals. So you're not allowed to roast. Batzal is onions, beitza, eggs, basar, meat on the coals, unless it can roast on Friday afternoons. I put it on Friday afternoon. It has enough time to minimally roast mishnei tzedadav, on both sides of the meat, on both sides of the onion, on both sides of the egg. Kamachal ben drusai. It has to be minimally cooked. Now, it's fascinating here. Shuhu chatzi bishulo. That's half cooked. Okay. Again, by the way, I think this, that I can't remember who's who, but Rambam and Rashi have an argument here. Half cooked to third cooked. I always say I don't know what the difference is. It's half cooked and third cooked. If it's not cooked, it's not cooked. But okay, I guess you can argue about what the time takes for it to fully cook, and then you can imagine what does it mean to be half cooked. I don't know, something like that. Filu bihu b'ksar gedi, and here we're talking about even if it's the meat of a kid, of a baby goat, that also has to once it is kamachal ben drusai, then it's okay to have this situation, even though we had said previously that if it's a Bisar Gedi or Oaf, that we do need to be concerned that here, I'll talk about this in a second with the Mishnah Brura. And we talk about if it was cut into pieces, the Bisar Gedi and Oaf, it's only mutter when it's in its limbs, separated into its limbs. So here we're going to say, I think, even if it's not in its limbs, we're going to be lenient here. Okay, we'll get to this more in a second. Since it's placed directly onto the coals, so since I put it on the coals, I'm clearly I'm letting it be known to myself more than anything else that I don't care if it roasts quickly and it burns a little bit. I am okay with it by putting it directly on the coals. No matter what I am doing here, I enjoy the burnt taste of my meat, of my eggs, of my onions. Therefore, we're always concerned if a person with their actions speak louder than words here. If by their actions they say, I don't mind the food I am roasting burns a little bit, so then we do need to be concerned that you will stoke the coals and play with the fire, because maybe what you care more about is that it gets done faster as opposed to whether it burns or not. Once it's roasted to the point of ben drusai, no, there is no concern anymore of stoking the coals. Even if it's the meat of the ox, which we said, oh, that's going to take time. Maybe we'll play with the fire and it will hasten the cooking. Because once it's minimally edible, once it's minimally edible, you're not going to take further action, even though it's literally on the coals here. You're not going to take further action, which will cause it to diminish in taste, flavor, whatnot. And by the way, lahafsido might even mean like now you're really going to burn it. Like not this like it has a burnt flavor, but you will burn it. You'll outright burn this thing because it's right on the coals. And so playing with the fire any little bit is a recipe, pun intended here, recipe for disaster. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah's comments here. Tez Zayin, Batzal Uveitza. V'hu adin she'arei dvarim she'ein ne'echalin chayim u'chedilekame. And this is the law, not just for onions and eggs and whatnot, the meat. This is the halacha for anything that cannot be eaten raw. If you can eat it raw, we're going to talk about it in Sif Daled. Or maybe we'll get there today, if not, then next week. Apples. Apples are edible raw, but we also know you can bake an apple. It could be a delicious dessert. You could have apple, baked apple, even if it's just make it a simple. You take an apple and you bake the apple and it's soft and you can mush it up. I don't know. You like it like that. So, but that's edible raw. So this is the law. What we're talking about now is things that aren't edible raw. Now, someone's going to raise their hand and say, but an onion can be eaten raw. And that is absolutely true. I think somebody here acknowledges that it can be eaten raw, but it is not a pleasant experience to eat an onion raw, though I would argue that a red onion, that's not necessarily the case. The white onions, the yellow onions, I hear you. You could eat it raw. It reminds me of a scene from Seinfeld where George was having a difficulty with his eyes, and I think he lost his glasses or something like that. And he goes into Jerry's refrigerator, as was it was Kramer. I'm sorry, it was Kramer. Kramer goes into Jerry, which he always would do. He would go into Jerry Seinfeld's refrigerator. It was the episode where there was a chicken restaurant across the street from Kramer's window, so he was never sleeping because the neon lights were causing his retinas to be all out of whack. He went into the refrigerator, takes an onion, starts eating it, and thinking it was an apple, and of course realizes very quickly that what he's eating is an onion. So that is not normal. It is not something that we would just take a bite of an onion. Although I acknowledge, I think red onions, people put them in salads all the time raw. So I'm not so sure about red onions. But anyways, with that, even with that, I think that the general point here still stands. Okay. Let's take a look at the next comment. Yud Zayin. Gabe gechalim, but it's on top of the coals. Hainu and this is very important, should nogin begecholin. It is actually, they're touching the coals, right? So it's literally on the heat source. There's no separation, there's no rack, it's on the heat source. It's on the coals. And after it's roasted, yamtin achi yichbu hagechalim va'azit. So now here's the halacha problem. Here's where the burning comes into play. You can't just simply take this off, because if you move the coals around, that's a different problem of havara. Now, we all know from life experience, when you move coals around, right, it causes the flame in certain ways to enhance, which is a violation on a biblical level of havara. So when do you take this thing off? It's really after the coals have burnt out. That's when you can remove it. So the idea of playing with the coals or putting them on the coals, so burning the food is a real possibility here. V'hinei hatam d'chayshina b'za shem yechata afilu b'bisar gedi hu k'moshe mefarish achar kach ke'dekeven sheinichol b'chulei. And the reason that we're concerned that a person might stoke the coals here, even when the bisar gedi, which will burn very quickly if you do that, because it's very soft meat, is, as we explained, the Shulchan Aruch explained afterwards, is because since you put it on, you are clearly indicating to yourself and to others and to the world, I don't mind if my meat burns. I like the burnt flavor. Okay, you're part of the 10% of society that likes their meats burnt, or maybe even less than that. But okay, your actions speak louder than words. If you're roasting it near the coals, not on the coals, but near the coals, that was sifalef, right? That was the dry heat of the oven. That was the barbecue, which has the gray. That's different. That's very different. Then we can talk about what kind of meat. Is the situation a covered situation, an uncovered situation? Then we can go through all the iterations we went through previously. So Kvarnis Bayer Bisifal Das Mechaber. The Mechaber's opinion was the Bisar Gediva of Shuraf Lo Chashira Klal Chatuya. The Mechaber's opinion was that if you have the soft meat of a gedi or fowl, again, which is rach, is soft, so we're not worried you're going to soak the coals. Because you'll burn the meat. It has to be that it is, according to the Mechaber's opinion, it has to be completely roasted beforehand. Otherwise, we are worried. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line. My bad. Sorry. And therefore, it's permissible to place it close to dark on Friday afternoon. And that's why it's okay to put the Bisar Gedi, which is not cooked Ben Drusai already. Right? It's practically raw. You can put it on close to the Shabbos starting, not a problem, because I'm not going to play with it. It's going to burn otherwise. Eggs and onions would be the same thing. If it's not on the fire, not on the coals, if it's near the coals, same thing. An onion, over the coals will not such a long period of time will burn if I raise the heat, I start playing with the fire, and the same with eggs as well. So this is the difference with Sif Aleph and Sif Beis. Off the coals or close to the coals, Beis is on the coals. Now, what about the meat of an ox or a fully grown goat, which is a tough meat? There you need to be completely roasted Friday afternoon before Shabbos starts. There we're concerned you will stoke the coals, because if you stoke the coals there, that will not cause the meat to be lost. It will not burn. Since it's not on the coals. Vidas Harama, this is again we're really reviewing now. Vidas Harama, the Rama's opinion was he did not separate between the case of on the coals or close to the coals, bein besar shor or besar kativa off, whether they, no matter what kind of meat you have, hashiur sheyitzalem b'od yom k'machal ben drusai, has to be machal ben drusai. Otherwise, there is nothing here to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. Hashiur sheyitzalem b'od yom. Now, but if it's got the whole clay coverings we talked about last time, so shari let's just really review, right? If you have the clay covering, so you're always good to go. If you don't have the clay covering, so that's where you need to have kamacha ben drusai, and then furthermore depends on the kind of meat. If you're talking about the soft, the soft meat, so then, well, no, sorry, it shouldn't make a difference even. So let me just go back here, make sure I'm not forgetting correct. Right, sorry, the Ramah, it's interesting here because he's saying the Ramah here says no difference if it's on the coals or close to the coals. Or what type of meat it is, as long as it's machal ben drusai. Right, but doesn't the Mechaber also agree with that in this simon? Or but sorry, never mind, I understand. The Mechaber separates between on the coals and off the coals. The Ramah never gets involved with this. He thinks there's one halacha, coals, on coals, off coals, doesn't matter to him. And if you're at the point of machal ben drusai, then there's nothing to talk about in either case. You're good to go. You're good to go. If you have the clay covering, maybe you don't even need the machal ben drusai. It could be less than that. Okay, fine. All right, I feel better about that. Now, the reason that the clay covering works is because no, we're not concerned you're going to break through the clay covering and then go and stoke the coals. That'll be a reminder to you. Oh, it's Shabbos. I should be careful. We already mentioned in Sif Aleph that we follow the Ramah's Ashkenazim. We follow the Ramah's position. Right? So bottom line, you have food that's roasting from before Shabbos on the fire. If it's kamacha ben drusai, you're really in good shape to allow that situation to continue. Okay, so if it's already kamacha ben drusai, you are good to let that continue. So if you really want to have fresh, grilled meat for Friday night, and it's you want to put it on so it minimally cooks before Shabbos, and then it continues into Shabbos, and you will have that fresh piece of meat right off the grill. So you have a way to do it here, and it's not crazy, by the way. If you have one of those charcoal grills, then the coals can continue on Shabbos, and they'll burn out by themselves. You don't have to worry about putting them out. So a lot of the grills today now, with the trick is now you have these gas grills where you have the handles. Now, how do you practical, not halachta? How do you close it so it's not on? So it's not running the entirety of Shabbos. It's more problematic as opposed to those old, tripod, charcoal grills where you light the coals, you put the meat on, it's minimally cooked. Shabbos starts, it continues going. And then, at some point the coals just they die off. That's it, but. The fancy ones make it more complicated.
Can you? A lot of them have covers. Can you just turn the dial off before Shabbos? Mm-hmm. Close the cover, and it'll kind of steam. It'll finish cooking.
I think that's not a problem. Once it's off, there's no fire. That's the ultimate grufo ketuma situation.
Yeah, that's what
it's off, and I would think that if it's
gas grill.
Kamachal ben, it's probably already partially cooked because you got to get all the way across the finish line. Yeah. I think that sounds good.
Not an issue.
Right. Okay. Yudches. Afilu hu v'sargdi. So he says here, the Mishnah Berurah, Dahainu afilu hu munach. Minutach. The mekil el v'sifalf. Even if it's cut into different pieces, which we were lenient about. That was our kula in Sif Aleph, right? We only said that the kula for the Mechaber of the Gedi and the Oaf is that if it's separated into its limbs, that's when we'll say, if you put it on the coals, or if you put it on the fire and you start playing with the fire, you have a polka. A polka will burn very quickly if you start, raising the heat on the grill. Hacha al gabe gechalim shani. Here, though, on the grill is different. As we will talk about. So there, so here we're saying it's even if we're worried you'll stoke the coals, even if it's cut into its limbs. Why is it different? So that's the continuation here because you don't care, right? You don't care that it'll burn So if you don't care, you don't care. So we don't have this leniency anymore. Okay, let's continue on to Sif Gimel, back upstairs in the Shulchan Aruch. Im avar o shachach v'nitzla v'shabes be'isur asur. If, let's say, now what's the difference between avar and shachach? Avar means done. It's done b'mezid. It's done purposefully. I understand fully what I'm doing. I always find it funny. The person knows what they're doing and they know it's wrong. So it's great they came to the shir and they learned the halacha, but maybe he didn't come. So if they're avar, so clearly you don't care about the halacha. Shachach, I understand. Okay, the person forgot, whatever. So the person, whether they did it purposefully or shachach, you made a mistake. You forgot the halacha, you forgot the situation, you forgot the meat on there, you put it on, and then you forgot it, and it was in a particular situation where it was not supposed to then continue roasting into Shabbos. So let's say it was less than machal ben drusai, and it's directly on the coals, or it's less than machal ben drusai, and it is basar shor, where we're worried you're going to play with it, and it won't burn. So any situation where I'm not permitted by halacha to roast it as it goes into Shabbos. I'm not talking about roasting on Shabbos. I'm not taking a hunk of meat and putting it on the grill on Shabbos. Forget that. That's the worst thing you could do. That's already, it is servicial. Here we're talking about one of the categories I just messed up. Okay, so usr. So now it's prohibited to eat this meat. The question is, well, how long does that prohibition last? We'll take a look at Yud Tes and Ches. Yud Tes, the Mechaber here writes, Avar shenasa b'mezid samach l'chashecha kukach. I place it full well, understanding what I'm doing and what I'm about to do wrong, right before Shabbos starts. Ad shelo yahayashu slitzlos mi ba'od yom kamachal ben drusai. That I know it doesn't have enough time. It's 10 minutes, 5 minutes before Shabbos. I know this can't be machal ben drusai in 5 minutes when sundown comes. I fully understand what's happening here, and nonetheless, I go ahead and do it. V'nitzla basman ha'asur, and I put it on to roast at the time when it's not okay to do so. Oh, shachach chatzali, perhaps more realistically, in terms of somebody who is cautious about halacha, you forget the roast al gabe kira v'nitzla v'Shabbos. Let's say I put it on before Shabbos, and I say, okay, let me give it a shot. I have 15 minutes. Let me put it on. I'll come check on it, and then 14 minutes, the minute before the sun sets. And then my this child decided to throw up all over the floor, and this one did this, and this one's drawing on the other child. And before you realize it, okay, it's already Shabbos. I didn't have a chance to check on the meat, and it was it's 2 minutes after Shkia, and I see, oh, look at this meat. It's not Malchal ben Drusai, and now it's been cooking on Shabbos and whatever. So afal pichein, osur v'diavad, even if it's accidental. Not allowed to have it even b'diavad, which means like even after the fact that went wrong. I didn't do it on purpose. No good. Kedei shelo yavo lahashos b'mezid v'yomar shachachti. The rabbis here don't trust us because they say in order that you don't then try this another time and you'll say out loud in the house, oh, I just putting this on here for now, and I'll come check on it soon and make sure. Really, in your head, this is not going to work, and I'm going to do it anyways. V'yomar shachachti. I'll say, oh, I forgot. I didn't check on the meat and now it's fully cooked. I'm really sorry. But now we have a delicious piece of steak for Shabbos. So in order so that people don't start to game the system, even a situation where I forget the meat on the grill, I do something it's accidental. It's not I didn't do this purposefully. Nonetheless, we say you can't have it usher. Now, what does usher mean? Bein lachem, whether there was a person who was roasting it, or for other people, they cannot have it ad motzai Shabbos b'chdei sheyas until after Shabbos. You don't throw it out. Take it out, put it in the refrigerator, and you'll eat it b'chdei sheyasu, which I've talked about a few times. Is the time it would take to have theoretically done this after Shabbos. So if it takes 15 minutes to grill a piece of meat, which probably doesn't take that long. I'm not sure how. Then depends also how you like it, I guess. So you'll wait that amount of time after Shabbos till you consume this food. As we talked about previously, in the lesson. Yes, Tommy.
Somehow this we said before, if you put the cholent up just before Shabbos, when the slow cooker, you're okay.
Yes.
Why is that different from this?
So that's a case of cooking versus roasting. So when we're talking about cooking, because that's a liquid medium, cooking is the only situation where it's going to be okay is when it's completely raw and it's meat. Because there's no way, even if you start playing with the fire, that it will be ready for your Friday night dinner at any point on Friday night. And therefore, we say it's asfedaite. It's off your mind. It's for tomorrow. There's no way you could get it ready for tonight. And since you're not going to play with it tonight, we're not worried you're going to play with it at all, because by the time the next morning comes around, it will be cooked. And so playing with the fire the next morning, stoking the coals, highly unlikely, because it is going to be cooked by the next morning. We know that the more it cooks, the better it gets, but it's already usually by the morning in a state where it's ready to be eaten. So that's the only case by cooking. By the way, if you have a veggie cholent, you don't have meat in there, then that kula does not exist for you, because you can get veggie cholent ready Friday night by playing with the fire. But here, when it comes to roasting, the nature of how the food gets prepared is different. So therefore, it's not just meat. It's baksal, ubeitza. Also, you have eggs and you have onions here on the table, because here obviously by roasting something, it will prepare a lot quicker. If you have a liquid medium cooking takes a lot longer. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Yeah, and that's the big difference. That's the Shulchan Aruch started. The Sif Aleph, he said even though you could do shahia in a kedera with raw meat, with a tzli situation of roasting, it's a different calculation. Okay. Sif Dalet. Anything interesting in there? Sorry.
No, he just points out that generally, if it's a rabbinic, you can benefit from it even on Shabbos if you forgot.
Right.
You can benefit on Shabbos. You don't have to wait.
Right.
But because people are so tempted, let's say,
by their food.
Oh, I forgot.
Right.
They said no good.
Right.
But then they said, if you cook something on Shabbos, you can have it immediately after
correct.
Shabbos. You don't have to wait.
If it was cooked by accident,
right?
I'll go one further.
Right.
If you look in Shin Yud Ches, which is the laws of Bishul, I think it's in Sif Aleph. Let's see if I remember from Smicha very well. So the Mishnah Berurah here quotes the Vilna Gaon. Let's see if I can find this really quickly. Well, he quotes here exactly if it's a malacha de rabbanon, so ein lesar b'diavad lehanos mena, as you said. But where is it? V'shogeg. Oh, where does he write this? But it's a very important halacha. But if you make a mistake and you cook on Shabbos, and it was an accident, and of course, cooking is an issur d'oraisa. He says that we follow the Tana, who says it's fine. You could even have it on Shabbos. So let's say by accident you do something on Shabbos. One time I heard of a situation, not here.
I could see, haven't done this yet.
Yeah.
I could see happening. You come downstairs and you open the Keurig and you put this thing in and you sit
right.
the Keurig,
correct.
Get a cup of coffee. And
you can make either. We can all see easily how to make these mistakes. They happen. Where is this? Now I'm gonna have to look for this all day. But it's the Vilna Gaon's psak based on one of the. There is a machlokas, three-way machlokas about this in the amongst the Tanaim, and ultimately he says that by the letter of the law we follow the rule that if you here I found it. So two ways of machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. That's the Shulchan Aruch who das Rabbi Yehuda, which is that you could have it after Shabbos. The Gra agrees with Tosfos is siyas on the pasuk Rabbi Meir. The b'mezid also ben lo ben lacherim, but Elul says Shabbos. If it's on purpose, you have to wait till after Shabbos. Uveshogeg muter gam lo miyad. On Shabbos, you can have it right away. So let's say you come downstairs and make a horrible mistake and you put barley in your cholent on Shabbos morning. You're like, oh, there's too much liquid here. I want it to get absorbed a little bit into the barley. I don't know what you're thinking. We make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I can make a mistake. I do something like that. According to if it's done b'shogeg, right, without fully understanding why I was doing what was wrong, you can have it right away. In a situation of great need, let's say your Shabbos lunch will be ruined, or you'll be completely embarrassed that you did such a thing and now you can't serve it to your guests. You can rely on this opinion of the Gra, which who paskins like Rabbi Meir, that when it comes to shogeg by cooking, you can serve the food immediately. So yes, here we're more strict by the Din D'Rabbanan that comes to cooking. We did this also in Rishon and Gimel, where we, laws of Chazar and Shia, we were also more strict because there's a temptation when it comes to food. Pretend, I'll pretend and it's easier and whatever. But generally speaking, by D'Rabbanans, we are more lenient, but not by the cooking ones, which is perhaps unfortunate or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Dalet, Shulchan Aruch, Peiros Shnei Chalin Chaim. And we'll get to Shin Ches in a couple of years, and we'll give it a full treatment when we get there. Okay, fruits that can be eaten raw, right? Like an apple. Muter litnam saviv hakader. You can put them around a pot that's on the fire, obviously, not just the pot that's standing on the counter. Even though we know that apple will not roast before Shabbos starts. But nevertheless, you need to be careful not to return the cover to this situation over top of this pot. From once it gets dark, once it's Shabbos, so that you're not mosif on the roasting, right? By enclosing a situation, you are hastening the cooking. So you say, I didn't touch the fire. Yes, but when you close the door and you close the cover of something, that's on the fire, now you cause it to cook faster. We got a picture over here from Steve. Okay. By the way, I appreciate this so much, because you should know I was trying to visualize this all of yesterday or 2 days ago when I was preparing it, and I was just like, So we have the Mishnah is going to explain it's a tripod situation. Right? You have a tripod, the fire's underneath here, the pot's on top. There's room on the tripod around it to put, looks like apples in this picture here that Steve is showing in his Mishnah Berurah.
There's another variation down there.
Oh, and it's up here. Sorry. Okay. So, this one. So I was looking at this one here. You have it around on the bottom. Correct. Yes. So now my question is going to be in a moment. I'll explain where my question comes in. What is the kisui case? So we'll talk about that in a moment. The pot cover. Right. So how does the pot cover affect the heat source? Underneath here, underneath the tripod. There's like sticks. There are like sticks there.
The pot will be hotter they say the pot will be hotter if the cover stays on.
Right.
You're supposed to take the cover off, and the heat will.
I see. Because saying that the heat around the pot will help the apple bake faster.
Right.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so Steve had a very helpful picture in his Mishnah Berurah edition. I should really get that one. That's a really good one. I know pictures of mine. Okay. So you have the fruits that are. So let's take a look at Chaf Aleph. Okay, fruit that's eaten raw. You can put it around the pot. It's a question. What does around the pot mean? So literally around the pot would mean, again, you have. He's going to describe it. Sviv hakadera, Chaf Aleph. Vakadera omeres al hapitput. A pitput is a tripod. Okay, that's like what you see in the picture there. It's got 3 legs. Underneath the tripod is a fire. The kamashmalan, as we learned, and we learned that it's permissible to place, before Shabbos, fruits around the pot. Even if, by the way, let's say the fire is coming up quite high and the tripod is not high up, and you have the fire really burning up high, the fruit is literally in the fire. No problem. V'nitzol b'Shabbos, and it'll roast on Shabbos mechom ha'esh, because of the heat of the intensity of the heat of the fire. V'lo dami levasal vasal uveitz batzal uveitza by hanis karlael. It's not like the onion, the egg we said before. Like we said before, to also you're not allowed to put it there. Ela imke nitzolu mi ba'ojom kamachal ben drusai. We said, it has to be machal ben drusai. Raw fruit is different. The hacha kevan shene'echal in chayin. Since these can be eaten raw, the apples, or whatever other fruit, you name the fruit, baked pear, whatever it is. It is like it's already cooked medrusai. It's already minimally edible the moment God created it and it was picked off the tree. The Yoster Haim Tovim below Bishokla, and he wants to claim. I'll let you all fight this out with him. He says that the fruit is better without cooking, in the first place. Mishar Tashish and his Bashal Kamacha Ben decide that if it's cooked even minimally. Raw fruit is better. Raw apple is better than a baked. Okay, some people might disagree with that. No one's gonna start playing with the fire. You're gonna hasten the cooking of the apple, which was already edible in the first place. Well, I would argue if it's in the middle, a half-baked apple is better. It's worse than the non-baked or the fully baked. I don't know. And what does it mean? Oh, around the pot. It doesn't say just say stam. You put it on the fire. Right, why don't you just say you put the apple right on the coals? Why not that case? Why don't you just say you put the apple on the fire? Why not you say it's permissible to put raw fruit on the fire? Davar nakat. This is the normal case in those days, at least. In the days of the Talmud, this was something that they would do to roast fruits. They would have something else cooking already, and that way, they would put it around. They wouldn't start a fire just to roast an apple. That's a waste of resources of their wood and whatever. Once you have it going, you'll put the apples around, and you'll make the special apple dish, apple dessert you want to make, whatever it is. So inami, or the other reason you could say that we're specifying here around the pot, Mishum din hakisui, because of the law about the kisui, the cover, which is just about to happen next in the Mishnah. That's only a relevant halacha that relates to a pot. So once we're talking about pots, so we make the whole thing about a pot. No, so that's not. So that's, by the way, that's a very Talmudic answer. That's often how you explain. I was learning recently with my 8th graders the opening the parts of Parak Hamaniach Sakad in Bava Kama, and talks about tripping over a barrel. So Rav says, well, you don't have to pay. If I puts a barrel in the middle of the street, you trip over it, and the barrel breaks, the contents spill out. You don't have to pay for it. What was the case? Rav says, well, first of all, why don't you just go around it? So the Gemara says. So Rav says, oh no, the whole street was covered in barrels, which means I didn't necessarily trip on it. I just was prevented from going. So when I climbed over the barrel and the weight of my body broke the barrel, smashed the barrel when I was climbing over it, I don't have to pay, even though there wasn't an accident. But the words of the Mishnah is, oh, tripped. Okay, that doesn't work. Rav's explanation doesn't work with the word tripped. So how does the Gemara save Rav's answer? The Gemara says, well, the last case of the Mishnah, 2 cases. The last case talks about what happens if the person gets injured when they trip. Does the owner of the barrel have to pay the medical bills or not pay the medical bills? So that only makes sense if I trip. Because if I think that, I'm foolish enough to think, I weigh, 180 pounds and I'm going to climb over a barrel, it's a soft wood, and of course it's going to crack through. No one's paying your medical bills for your foolish decisions, even though I was blocking your way. Figure out a different way where you don't have to hurt yourself. If you do something that's, you're, as I said, you were stupid enough to hurt yourself, so you have to pay the bills. So since that only makes sense in the case of nitkal, tripping, that's when the medical bills are covered for me, because I've tripped. It was a situation where it was around the corner. It was nighttime. It was whatever. I couldn't see it. Therefore, we mentioned in the first case of the Mishnah, tripping. Same thing here, right? It's a very Talmudic answer. Once the last case makes sense only in the case of the pot. So we brought in the pot earlier on so we could just make it all a case of the pot. It's a very Talmudic answer. So if you don't like this, it's very much following, I'm just saying, in the Talmudic style. Chaf Beis, Afal Pish Efshar. Okay. Even though it is impossible for it to roast before dark, right? You put the apple on 15 seconds before Shabbat starts. Can't roast Kimachal Ben Drusai, or I can't roast fully, however you want it. The Lodari Lavatsal B'Sif Beis Das. It's not like the onion from the previous Sif, which was not allowed. Afal Pishal if Amin Ochlan Asochai here talks about eating the raw onion raw. Yes, you can't eat an onion raw. It's like you can eat an onion raw at times. Mikol Makom Ein Tov L'Ochlo Chai Kemo Tapuf. Even a red onion, by the way. I think he's right about this, in my opinion. It's not necessarily that it's delicious. It's good when you mix a red onion with other things. To eat it raw, straight up, not as great. And yes, you can, and in certain situations we do. But it's not like an apple. An apple, you go to the refrigerator, you pull out your apple, you go to the shelf, pull out an apple. It's ready. It's delicious. There's no like not grinning and bearing it. And onion raw is not. It's not the same. Even if you could eat it raw, but it's not as delicious to eat it raw. It's not as good to eat it raw. It's better when you cook it. Onion, undoubtedly, by the way, I think we can maybe not red onion, but undoubtedly, onions are much better when you've cooked them. Sweet. If you have something where it's better, you can eat it raw, but it's better when it's cooked. So then it seems like it fits in the category of batzal. If it's something that's a fruit where it's not necessarily better, it's different, but not better, then I think it's in the category of the payros here.
So you have certain vegetables that can be eaten raw and often are, like zucchini.
Right.
And if you've never tasted raw asparagus, I think it's better than cooked asparagus. It's delicious.
I never had.
To it. Try it.
I'll try.
So what would that qualify as an apple for people who eat these things raw?
Right. It's an interesting question. Sweet
corn is often eaten raw?
Right. Sweet corn is eaten raw.
Try it.
Sweet corn. I've never done that. Let's take a poll here. Steve, have you ever had that? No. Tom, you ever eaten corn raw? I'm getting a no here. I'm not saying that that's the basis is spoken, but but
you guys are missing a lot.
Yeah, apparently I didn't know you could do that. So I thought it was like, oh no, you can't eat raw, I'm sure you could eat raw vegetables, but it wouldn't be as delicious. Now, Hinda's arguing that it is more delicious, or at least it's as delicious. Asparagus is better, raw than it's cooked.
I'm afraid asparagus under any circumstances.
Steve's not an asparagus fan in general, cooked or raw. But bottom line, I don't know if we would say this is a good question. I'll double check. I'll try to remember to ask my rabbi. But the question is this halacha subjective to the person, or is there sort of what's subjective but to the average person out there? In which case, I'm not sure the average person is in agreement with you here on this one. Even though a lot
of recipes with salads that have these things
have raw. Interesting. Okay. So perhaps if that's the case, right? Would you say that it's like red onion, where of course it's a salad, it's a good ingredient to have raw, but for the most part is better when you've roasted or cooked it. Would you say the same about these things?
Depends on your taste. I have to tell you, when I'm preparing asparagus for cooking,
you're eating them raw. I'll have to try this now, folks. You all join me in this experiment. We've made asparagus in our house before many a time. Never eaten it raw. I'll try it. I have no problems trying new things. Okay, so I don't have a full answer to your question. Is it in the category of batzal or is it in the category of payros? The nafkamina here would be: can you put the asparagus? In his case, could I put the asparagus over the fire 3 minutes before Shabbos, where it's not going to cook minimally? Can I then keep it on the fire and then enjoy it? If I say that it's like, and again, not cooking it, I'm not roasting it. If I say it's like the payros, so then it's okay. If I say it's like the onion, then it's no good because it has to be minimally cooked when Shabbos starts. So that's the nafkamina here. The Mishnah would say wash and have bread and make hamotzi. Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I'll try to dig a little more here. My gut says it's sort of like, what is the average usage by a person out there? And I just don't know the mitzias. You're saying you're suggesting to me that I'm missing out on something, that in some ways that there are more people out there who have recipes of raw corn and raw asparagus, and maybe that's true. And I'm in my own little world here, so I just don't know the mitzias of the world right now. What's the average person going to say about this? So it's a good question. So he says here, what else can you eat raw, but it's better when it's cooked? Kamo tapuche ya'ar. What's tapuche ya'ar? It literally means the wild apples. I think here we're talking about crab apples, if I'm not mistaken. These are things that could be eaten raw, but much better when they're cooked. v'chadoma. So asur kivasa levetz. Right? If something can be eaten raw, but it's better when it's cooked, that it's in the category of the eggs values and his Carlisle, as we talked about before. Chaf Gimel. Here we go. He says here, okay, this is the second case, right? But you have to be careful to not return the cover, to the pot, if it was uncovered before Shabbos started, so that you don't add to the intensity of the heat. So after mitzad hakadera, even if it's to the side of the kedera, right? So the apples are to the side. If it was uncovered on Shabbos, the cover was uncovered of this pot. Again, it was covered on top because why? You don't want it to cool down. So you have your food, which let's say on its own is fully cooked. So you have a soup going in there, fully cooked. It's over the fire, so you did shahiyah the perfectly beautiful way. You follow all halacha, and you want to keep it hot right now. No problem. It's still very hot, and you want to keep it hot. So you put the cover on top. All right. Okay. And let's say you did what you had to do. I don't know. You do something. Don't worry about the pot here. You're just covering it so that it doesn't cool down. Oh no, sorry. This is just in general. Sorry, mitzad means to the side of the pot. With regards to the pot, I'm sorry, mitzad akader. If you just focus on the pot itself and the contents in the pot. If it gets uncovered on Shabbos, the cover gets uncovered, which was on top. So it doesn't cool down. And you can cover it on Shabbos. It got uncovered. You can cover it on Shabbos, and you can add 3 covers to it on Shabbos. No problem. As we'll talk about in Sif Dalet in Reish Nun Zayin, which is about hatmana. So let's imagine a hatmana situation. Let's say your pot was in a hatmana situation going into Shabbos, and a davar she'ein mosif hevel. Let's say it's not continuously adding heat; it's just hot, and you're insulating it. If it gets uncovered, it's okay to return the cover. It's okay to return the cover on it, and to even add on it. So you want to put another something on it because the started Shabbos covered. Hatmana is allowed if it enters the Shabbos in a hatmana situation, not b'davar hamosifel, but davar she'ein mosifel. So it's just sitting somewhere insulated. I then uncover it. I can cover it, and I can put a blanket on top of it again. Since it started Shabbos in a hatmana, I can further the hatmana on Shabbos in a permissible way, as we'll talk about when we get to Sif Dalet and Reish Nun Zayin. Sham hakadera kvar nizbash lo yodon. There we're talking about whatever's in the pot was cooked. Right, it's done. No, by covering it again and adding the blanket and whatever, I'm not hastening the cooking process. It's cooked. Here the fruit is cooking. V'holchin b'Shabbos into Shabbos. Starts before Shabbos, a little bit, and ultimately it cooks on Shabbos. And the pot cover is also on top of it. Now this is where Steve's drawing helped, because I kept reading this line and I say, but how is the pot cover on top of the apples if it's on the side of the apples? So what Steve is showing us in his edition is that now the pot cover doesn't help. It's not on top of the apples. But since the pot cover retains the heat in the pot, the walls of the pot around which the apples are placed are hotter. And since the situation is now one which is a more heat intense situation for the apples, they will hasten their cooking even a little bit, and therefore it is prohibited. Also, so therefore, if you have a situation like this where you're cooking and the apples are around the pot, which is on top of this tripod, you're not. And let's say it was uncovered. Let's say you uncovered it on Shabbos, and you want to put the cover back on, which on its own would be okay for the pot. With regards to the apples, though, now you're cooking the apples. So cooking is a problem. Now there's a big discussion here, which I don't have time to fully get into here. Is the cooking that happens here to Oraisa or to Rabbanan? Bottom line, it's not allowed. But if you have raw foods and you cook raw foods on Shabbos, which were edible before you cook them, is the Isser to Oraisa or the Rabbanan? So it's at least a discussion. Many seem to come out on the side that it is the Oraisa, even though you could eat an apple raw. But if you cook the apple, you bake the apple, it is a biblical prohibition. So that's not our discussion today, but is an interesting thing to think about. Okay, one last comment, and then we'll stop for today. It will hasten to complete the cooking process of this fruit. Certainly can't take the apple and in this situation and put it on, next to the pot, which is over the fire on Shabbos. Gufa, like itself. Samuch latanur k'dei, right near the oven, so it'll roast. Even if something is, away from the actual fire, if you're going to roast something, even a little bit, that's not okay. That's the Isser of Bishul. And now you can't start playing games. Well, I put it before the oven was lit, and then it gets lit on Shabbos. We talked about the very rare situation where that's allowed, and it was in the Ashkenazi lands in the winter, and then the non-Jew lit the situation. And we'll find a kulo, and it's there. But generally speaking, you can't start playing this game while I put the fruit on before the fire was on. As we talked about, he says here, as we talked about in Sof Siman Reish and Gimel. Aval, but kodem chashecha. But before it's dark, before it's Shabbos, mutar litein osam al tanur hacham o bekachlin. You can, but before Shabbos, you can put it in a hot oven, and it will continue to roast on Shabbos. Or I could put it in a kechlin. A kechlin was a type of tanur. Min tanur chimum shahayu me'alav o be'ovi dafrotav batei kibul. Or it's on top or on the sides of the inside of the oven. There are batei kibul. There's a place where you can put certain things. Little crevices where you can put certain items, and they will cook. We mentioned this once in the previous simon, the kechlin. V'da demash hitarnu litain osam lechatchila samuch l'chashecha, and that which we permitted you to do this lechatchila close to dark, meaning before Shabbos starts. Hainu kodem shkia l'shkia. When we talk about before dark, we're talking about before shkia. You can say, after shkia, it's still a little bit of light outside. The sun sets, but there's still a little bit of light. Don't be a wise guy. We're talking about shkia here. And when I in the Siman Reish Samech Aleph, Bedin Bein Hashmashos, when we get to Reish Samech Aleph, not so far away from getting there, we will have a lengthy discussion about Bein Hashmashos. That's when we'll introduce the whole thing about Rabbeinu Tam's Zman about Seis HaKochavim. It would seem that if you follow the Rabbeinu Tam's position, for Tam's position, Shabbos will start a lot later for all of us, which is why Rabbeinu Tam didn't even follow Rabbeinu Tam. But that is this topic of fruit. So again, just in summary, raw fruit, not a problem to roast it. Even if you put it in 2 seconds before Shabbos and it roasts on Shabbos, raw fruit is permissible. It is permissible to that. So if you have a grill that is on, and now you have your steak, right? That was already Kamachal Ben Drusai before Shabbos started, and you're like, you know what? A nice side of not onions. Onions have to be Machal Ben Drusai, but I would have an apple with it. You can put the apple on 3 seconds before the sun goes down, and it will let it roast over those coals. It is permissible to do such a thing, and you'll have a baked apple or a roasted apple. We'll stop here. We'll continue next week with Sif Hay, which will turn from roasting different foods, and raw foods. Now we're going to turn to baking. I think that's what this is about, right? So about afiyah, about baking bread in the pot, in the oven prior to Shabbos. What does that look like? Is it a problem if I start baking the bread before Shabbos starts and I want to continue baking? I'm not talking about reheating the challah. Like, you're baking the challah, right? So 10 minutes before Shabbos, I put it in the oven. Is that going to be allowed? Is that not going to be allowed? How do we deal with it? Also, in the times of the Gemara, so this is what this is about. They used to stick their bread because dough is sticky. They would stick it on the side of the oven, and then they would have a special tool called a. It's the verb is haroda. There was a special thing that they would kind of imagine, almost like the pizza. How in the pizza oven they had that special. I also imagine they would kind of peel it. There was something that would help peel the bread off the wall of the oven. And so the question is going to be, can I peel the bread off the wall? Is that a separate problem also? So we're going to deal with all these issues that relate to bread in Sif Hey. It's kind of a lengthy topic here. And then if we still have a ways to go in Reish and Dal, but we're going to get there. Sure. Okay, let me stop the recording here.
I have to qualify one thing I said. If you're going to eat